Welcome, everybody. It's your boy, the Versace Stoner, with another episode of VSW.
These sons will beat you.
That's right, folks. Big news flash. Oh my God! VSW.
Fast hats know what time it is. Get up off of your seats and bow down to the king.
One of the greatest in this game, and one of my favorite all-time people in this game. The Versace Stoner.
It's places like this. I started in a mill. I'm here still in a mill. I consider myself a mill wrestler.
Welcome, everybody. It's your boy, the Versace Stoner. We're here with a very special episode of VSW Podcast. Tonight, we have the legendary professional wrestler. That's right, everybody. April Hunter. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You know, this has been, something I've been wanting to do for a while. We had a little bit of, weather issues. And, if anybody follows the news, Florida can be kind of an up and down state when it comes to weather.
Yeah, I live here too, so I get it. So we've had some. This is our time. This is our winter, isn't it?
It is, and it's funny. Last year, it was we're in Mass, but we got family in Florida. We're always traveling there. But last year we went on our honeymoon to Florida, and my wife, I let her just pick the whole thing. Did 2 days. She's a big Disney fan. She went to Disney, stayed at all the nice resorts. She wanted to do the Animal Kingdom Lodge and all this stuff. Great. She puts us right in the middle smack of that hurricane we got. So we're there for like 2 days. All of a sudden, the hotels are getting full. We're seeing closure. We're like, what's going on? All of a sudden, we start to watch the news a little bit, and we're saying, oh boy, we were like, we had to be in the hotel probably for at least like 2 days straight.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you one thing, there's no place I'd rather be, after that in a storm than Disney, because they have their own power, they have their own generators, and they have their own entertainment.
They do. They really do. I mean, you lucked out. So I'm in a small town here, where my town is a rarity. It's like it's a harbor town. So they have all the power lines are buried, and they have their own water supply. So I always feel like, we're kind of safe here. I think it's like an anomaly in Florida. And we often get people coming in from everywhere to stay here when,
storms hit. Yeah.
When shit hits. Yeah.
When shit hits. That is right.
Mm-hmm.
But, I used the word entertaining. I have to say something very entertaining. It's been just, it's kind of got me this resurgence. I watched you, in the past. I saw you, WCW, Total Impact. I've seen it all. I've watched wrestling, since, I don't know, mid-'80s when I was growing up. And we can talk a little bit about your past, but, it's great to see you, in Kill City Cup.
I was thrilled to be a part of that. I don't think I realized what it was going to be. I just thought it was, I don't know. I thought it was just going to be another, random indie show. I didn't realize it was going to be what it turned out to be. And when they said they were doing characters for everyone, come up with a character, like nobody was, just a wrestler. Everybody was this amazing character. I walked into the locker room and I saw this just makeup and costuming and hats and like the whole thing. I was like, what is this? This is really different. This is really different. And I remember writing about it afterwards. I was like, this is badass. Like everybody was something different. They got to really kind of be, this, I don't know. I've never done it like that before. It was like an acting experience too.
It is, it's something like really, it's something unique in wrestling. And I'm going to say, like, I'm a big fan of indie wrestling, and I do like the independent scene a lot. And I've been, I've been watching it for a couple of years, like intensively. And there's something, about it. It doesn't matter the local scene that you're in, it doesn't matter what state, but eventually, if you keep going to enough shows or a lot of shows, you're going to start to see this, this kind of the same matchups. You're going to start to see the same things. You're going to start to see the same people. And eventually it's going to kind of lull for you in excitement and in everything, just because it's been overdone. It's not anything that anybody is doing wrong. It's just that it's a small demographic and you're in a small area. So I started to get in, in 2020, a lot of things happened. Unfortunately, we had a pandemic. That was one of the big things.
Mm-hmm.
In mass, we had no pro wrestling at all. We were shut down. Florida, they allowed it. Other states, they allowed it. Mass was a total shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't, everybody was kind of at a standstill. Wrestlers, they were having a horrendous time. Podcasters and people that were doing media were having a horrible time. We had nothing to do. Everybody had nothing to do. And all of a sudden, then, things started to change. We started to see tapings. We started to see, production shows that were done, in training facilities, and then, and later on in other stages. And they started to do things a little bit different. Some of them, they started to incorporate, I remember watching one show that was totally done, it was professional wrestling, but it was to the sounds of, classical music. There was no wrestling involved. I mean, there was no commentary involved. And I started to see different, things happening. And when I see different, I start to get intrigued. And this was very different. When I started to see wrestlers that I know, but different names and different characters, and like you said, different personas, and you're bringing that in as something that you don't see every day in wrestling, because normally, you have this character in wrestling and that's it, give or take.
Yeah, that's accurate. That's very accurate.
But when you start seeing, like I said, you start seeing characters like Zipmunk, okay, Mason X, Leon, the Machine. I mean, you start to see these characters, and then you see them, they're comic book characters. And this is, something that brought me back to my childhood. And I was telling someone this the other day. The Kill City Cup means a lot to me. I've been in a mental low for quite a while. After 2020 and 2021, I lost a lot of steam, and I had a lot of ups and downs in life in general. You got a family, you got kids, you got everything going on. And I started to lose, steam and balance, and, wrestling and everything just kind of got pushed aside as I was dealing with, other things, life things. And, this Kill City Cup, it kind of rejuvenated a lot of my passion for pro wrestling, because it brought me back to a time when characters of wrestling were larger than life. When I grew up, there was this Andre the Giant and these characters that you wouldn't see walking down the street because they were monsters. And that's what this brought me back to, that these monstrous beings are, doing battle. And it brought me just, a lot of nostalgia, and it gave me this, resurgence of, I really like, this scene, and, there's a lot still left in it to watch. And like I said, something new will always kind of spark that in me.
Yeah, I didn't know it was going to end up being like a wrestling show that was also infused with comic book and video game aspects. Like, it's like they took the three things there and made it into one. So when I watched the final product when it debuted, then I was like, holy shit, this is something different. I've never seen anything like this. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. You don't see anything like that. I mean, it's three very important demographics of, I would say, just not even consumers, but just of,
nerd culture.
Yeah, I would say they are cultures. It has become a culture now. And you got those three important demos, and it all got put into one. It's like, well, what's not to like here? And it's something in it for everybody.
Yeah, I do a lot of comic stuff and cosplay, and I've been doing comics for a long time, working with artists and doing the Comic-Con. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, that's really cool. It's like taking my two career paths and mushing them into one. So yeah, I appreciated that.
Yeah, and I think, that's been a lot for like a lot of the characters there that have been able to pull things like, you got these great, actresses and actresses like Queen Gia. She's a great character. I've had her on my show. That's kind of like, her around there, these Comic-Cons, these, kind of, where you get these meet and greet experiences. Not necessarily an indie show, though, perhaps,
Right.
But you get these worlds now that are swaying, because you got wrestling fans that love both. And, me being a fan of wrestling, yes, I collect toys, I collect figures, I collect, Funkos. My kid's got me collecting Funkos. He's got me collecting stuff. So I'm into all this, pop culture stuff. And you start seeing these characters, and it's a big, it's a big kind of one circle, especially, you know, and then if you go into the video game realm, eventually, well, you get into a wrestling video game and then, or a fighting video game. And that's, you know, the greatest thing you can see right there. I don't even know if it's on my background, but it does say, you know, like Mortal Kombat meets WWE or something like, and that's the feel it does have. It has that Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, Tekken kind of feel, mixed with like Twisted Metal kind of feel. If you've watched that or played that.
Yes.
You know, you got this kind of everybody fighting for their freedom, everybody fighting for a prize over some evil overlord, which, you know, who knows, could be the future of the world. You know, and I love how it opens up. It's like, you know, he's got the world by the balls, and it's just like this is just one man with total power, or two people rather. You do have Queen Gia, but you know, you know, and it's just it tells a story. It tells a story in a very short period of time too, which, you know, another thing I have to praise about that, I've been to a lot of indie shows, and you know, a lot of them are like 2-3 hours long.
I call them the Frank Goodman shows.
Yeah, and you know, they're fine, but sometimes the whole story isn't even told in that 2 or 3 shows. Yeah, in the 2 or 3 hours, you have to go, you know, wait another show. This was all great matches, all wrapped into 1 hour or so, and the whole story was told, ready for a sequel any day. You know, in anybody's mind. Like, I'm an author, I write things. I've already thought of like 5 sequels to that in my head. You know,
make
just
sure you tell them.
Oh, I've told everything to Luke. You know, I praise Luke up and down for this project. I think it's a very fun project, but it's on a creative, being a creative person, it like sparks. It's just because there's so many avenues, and that's what I was talking to, you know, other, you know, people on the show, you know, like the character avenues. Like, you know, were you able to like pick your character? Were you able to work with that?
I was.
So tell me, like, what made you want to be that?
Well, I think they asked me if I could do some kind of a warrior or barbarian. I was like, yeah, because I do Viking things all the time. I'm always at the Ren Fair doing Viking stuff. It's one of the most common cosplays that I dress up as. So to have the opportunity to do a Viking on TV on this particular show, I was like, yeah, I can do that with my eyes closed. You know, just and just do the paint and do the braids, and I got it. I didn't know they had a makeup artist there who was damn good. If I'd known that, I would have let him do it all for me. But instead, I showed up ready to go. Next time, if there's a part 2. Yes, but I had a good time with it, and any excuse to get into war paint, and I'm all about it.
It is, and I mean, you got to, you know, you had some scenes. You didn't wrestle per se, but you were, you know, involved just as much, and you know, being with Leon, and you know, having this kind of, you know, the wasteland kind of vibe, kind of, it brought me you know, like a post-apocalyptic kind of world, and you know, you guys are all out there, and it looks so cool to me. And just some of the spots were just, you know, just the angles and the way that it happened, like the filming was very good too, because it being the way it was like, I want to tell people it's not just your typical indie show, because there is cinematic blends into it very seamlessly. You know, very seamlessly done. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a cinematic movie, but there's, you know, definitely scenes that you could tell, well, oh, wait a minute, that was, you know, a little bit slowed down, or a little bit fast sped up, or, you know, but, you know, it was done very seamlessly. So it was like, you know, parts I saw, there was one spot I remember, like the little, I don't know his name. I didn't catch his name in the show. The little guy that you guys were with, and he just charges, and it's just like, and he's smiling, and the smile on his face is just like so devious, and he just charges. And I'm just like, oh, this is great. This is great, because I wasn't, you know, you didn't expect anything watching this. Being a fan watching it, like, you just like you said, like at first you're like, oh, maybe this is probably another indie show with some kind of a theme to it. But it's so much more. It goes so much more deeper than that when you start getting into the story and the why, the where, the how. That gets kind of explained along the way. But you know, like I said, you know, it's something new, it's something fresh, and I think that, you know, that's what kind of, you know, obviously everything, you know, in wrestling is, you know, a lot of it is nostalgia. People love the olden days. They love to talk about, you know, the Attitude Era. They love to talk about the ruthless aggression. They like their, you know, heroes of the past. But a lot of the newer fans, and a lot of, you know, even the older fans at this point are like, yeah, that's great, and we've watched it, but, you know, we've watched that now for so long. We want something new in the world. We want to see new wrestling. We want to see some, you know, new characters, new faces, old characters with the twist, you know, fun stuff. You know, and that's what it had. It had, you know, fun in it, funny, humor.
It was absolutely fun.
And
Oh,
it looked like it was a blast to work on, like being part of the crew on that set. Just everybody just seemed so chill and vibe on there, and just seeing the cast of the wrestlers that were on there put together must have just been hilarious. There must have been some hilarious moments on there, just having fun.
it was actually it was run very well. Everybody was super cool. I was amazed how high quality everything was. So for something kind of put together, with a limited budget, they got, one of the better photographers that they could. I mean, the guy, Arnie, was amazing, and all the videographers, everybody was very, very good. Didn't seem like they were cutting corners in the areas where it mattered.
See, and that's the smart thing. I mean, if you're in photography or anything, and put all your money into the camera, because no matter what you shoot, it'll look good.
Yeah, yeah. And they
and
treated
it
us very
it
well
was
too.
good too.
They treated us well too. Like, they took care of us as well, and it was just nice. It was refreshing,
Yeah, it looked like I heard nothing but great things with Luke running the project, and him kind of being the man behind the scenes. I heard he was a little bit of a bull in having things done, but it was all for good reasoning.
Like I said, even the makeup artist, I was surprised that the guy was really, really good. And had I known, I usually don't trust anybody with my makeup, but had I known he was that good, I would have been like, yeah, go ahead. So
Yeah, I mean, just like I said, seeing the costume design, the sets, the set itself, seeing everything just the way it's done, very high. But like you said, the limited budget that it was working with, and I don't even know the numbers, but when someone says limited budget, I can throw some numbers in my head around, and knowing what a wrestling show can kind of cost. Very, very high quality, almost, like I said, it's being shown on now, like, film festivals, and it's going in that direction. And, once it hits there, then it's just off and running. It's way beyond wrestling now.
Yeah. I love the fact they're calling it a film now. I'm being surrounded by all my pets. They're all like, this is my third podcast today, and they're like, we haven't seen you. What's going on? Come hang out. So they're saying hi to everyone.
Love it. I love it. Yeah, it has its an IMDb page, and all now actors too, and that's the cool thing about it. It's considered a real like film.
I know.
Which is fun. I mean, most wrestling is by some means can be considered, a movie, and I've seen a lot of wrestlers with IMDb roles, but this is kind of different because this is now, like I said, being shown at film festivals, and people are, giving it attention. We got a lot of people out there trying to get a lot of eyes on it, because I think it's captivated a lot of us podcasters and, fans of wrestling. And, I think it's something, like I said, that we've all been kind of waiting for, something new and fresh. It has these hardcore, scenes, and, the brutality of what, hardcore wrestling could be, without the dangers and, the rawness of hardcore wrestling. So, you got these, blood spots that, with the effects, you got these hard hitting shots, you got things that wouldn't happen in your normal match. But again, it's in a very cinematic, kind of controlled, very I'll say like non-ECW kind of way. You know what I mean? Like, it's not your typical, hardcore death match. But that, someone's not, you got Hangman hanging somebody. But it's not, again, it's done in such a way that it's like, oh, this is part of the movie. This is, the cutscene. So it's very, very cool. And I mean, you've been around, like I said, you started in WCW, and I mean, they don't even exist anymore.
No, they do not. No,
I tell some newer fans, they're like, what's WCW? I'm like, what?
Woman Crush Wednesday.
I mean, let me ask you some like other boring questions, I guess. I mean, what got you into pro wrestling? Were you a fan as a child?
To pro wrestling or the pro wrestling business? Because those are two different stories, really.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess pro wrestling probably. What got you into the pro wrestling business?
Playboy. So Playboy. I was competing. I was in the fitness industry. I was represented by Metrics and doing all the competitions. And Playboy was doing a special edition called Hard Bodies. So they were looking for fitness girls. Yeah. And I did that issue, and Kimberly Page was in it as well. So
Oh, wow.
when WCW saw it, they recruited me. And I didn't know what I was walking into. I was not a wrestling fan. I grew up, I started doing martial arts when I was 10 or 11. So I grew up, Bruce Lee and MMA and UFC, like that was my thing, not wrestling. So I didn't know really anything about what I was walking into, which is probably beneficial because I didn't have like this,
You
stars
didn't
or
have any
whatever.
stigmas, but you didn't have this kind of like stardom where like, I just want a world title around my waist. I don't care about anything else.
No, I didn't know who anybody was. I was like, hey, nice to meet you, and where do you want me to be, and what do you want me to do, kind of thing. So that was it. And everybody I worked with in my group, which was at that particular time the NWO, they were all really decent to me. I know they have, a reputation that precedes them. But as far as being people, they all treated me very well. And I still talk to them, still friends with, pass by, see some of them, run into them, talk, keep in touch with them. So they were all decent to
Yeah,
me.
I mean, I've heard. I mean, yeah, I mean, I've heard rumors and such and so forth. But I mean, any dealings I've had, honestly, with I would say like 99.9 of the professional wrestlers that I've talked to or ran into or met at shows or met on
Mhm.
the street or met at Comic Cons, they've always been like pretty decent human beings. I mean, there's always that 0.1%, but usually they're called out, canceled, and we don't hear from them ever again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so that's really cool. And I mean, I'm guessing in the time frame, WCW was competing with WWE. WWE, of course, had their play, boy people. You had China up in there, and all these people trying to get in there.
Mhm.
And it was a very, I mean, that was the attitude ever, kind of around that, ruthless aggression, kind of where the sex was kind of driving, the crowd. I remember going to shows in that era and just being flashed multiple times and being like, "Oh, sweet, I'm only like 17," and just going to shows, and it's totally different now. Back
Yes.
then everybody was just flashing and signs and flashing.
Yep. Do you remember
Now
all the
everybody,
like G-strings everywhere and all
oh, it was
all
wild.
the bikini competitions and
Oh yeah, and this was at Monday Night Raw. This wasn't even like anything like indie scene. This was just
no,
on
that was
TV
that was
wrestling.
on TV after 9 o'clock on WWE.
And it was just a totally different world. If you're going back now, if you go to today and going, and sitting in a show today in WWE, it's just like, oh, it's so quiet and tame.
Yeah.
Everybody's
I
on their
wonder if it's
phone.
just a matter of time before they start like quietly pulling all that stuff and getting rid of it. Like, you know what I mean? Because of the environment that we're in now, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what's
It is.
this, what's
It's
that.
such a fine line now. It's like
Yeah,
because a lot of it going back to it, I mean, I have to say, is cringe watching.
it is. Yet at the time, though, it was fun. And
At the time, it was awesome. But I mean, at the time, I was 18 years old. A lot of things were awesome.
everything was extreme back then. That was the key word then, extreme. And people lived up to it. Places lived up to it. Shows lived up to it. It was all about being
And
extreme.
unfortunately, people tried to live up to it. I mean, how many careers ended shortly, or people are still suffering injuries from them trying to be extreme?
Right.
And
Right.
I mean,
We had total freedom back then, though. We had freedom to fail, to be an idiot, to look
Oh
stupid.
yeah, I mean, I was a fan of. I mean, I was a fan of some of the most extreme. I liked XPW, and that had straight up the porn stars straight up working the shows. Some of them.
Yeah.
I actually went to he did a reboot. We tried to do a reboot, and it was
Was
like
that the Shane
totally,
Black one?
yeah.
I remember that.
And he did a reboot not too long ago in New York, and I'll tell you something, it was totally different. It was like a mini, like like a regular indie show. It was totally clean. I'm like, oh, it's ain't what I remember. But it was kind of cool to see some faces. Actually, on that show, and who won that night, the championship was actually Brian Cage, which was pretty cool.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Big fan of Brian Cage. Been watching.
He's good. He's one of the. It's one of the. There aren't a whole lot of wrestlers out there that look the part and are extremely athletic. It's like a lot of them you get one or the other.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's also not many wrestlers, to be honest with you, that can bring me and my wife together. She's such a big fan of his, and like she was a big fan of him before we met.
Mm-hmm.
She follows him on like Instagram, so she likes all like whatever he posts about his daily life, and I'm just all about the wrestling. But we always come together for Brian Cage, so I got her to watch Kill City Cup because of that too. I was like, you're not going to believe your boy's in the show. She's like, okay, I'll watch it. But yeah, so you did the WCW thing for a while, obviously, and then that shut down. Were you there in
Yeah.
the end?
No, Terry Taylor, I wasn't happy there. They weren't using me. I was sitting in the back a lot.
Yeah.
And I told Terry I wanted to leave. So he called Jim Ross and he told Jim, he's like, hey, we got a girl here. She's not under contract. She's doing a per show. Redhead, tall. You should think about taking a look at her. So WWE had me fly into LA. I lived in Las Vegas at the time. They flew me into LA the day after WrestleMania, and I met with the writers. And then they asked if I would consider becoming a full-on wrestler. And then they sent me to Killer Kowalski's to train in Boston. And that was that. And in the meantime, when that happened, shortly after I got there, both WCW and ECW folded. And it was just a mess as to, whose contract do we keep? Who do we get rid of? Who do we shuffle around? So I kind of got lost in the shuffle there. So I started traveling overseas and working a lot in Japan and Mexico and Canada and Europe. So that's where I ended up for a while.
Very nice. Killer School, great school. I remember I actually, when I got out of high school, I wanted to be a pro wrestler. I being loving it. And with everything being extreme back then, like, I just remember high school, people would, we would have like our own matches and people would be, bringing barbed wire over. Oh, what are we bringing over Friday night? People would be bringing like barbed wires and bats, and we'd all be having our own matches and stuff. And wrestling was like really, really big for us looking back. Like I remember, like I was talking to my wife the other night about it, and it was like we're talking about school because my kid's kind of in school now, and I remember in high school, we had like a bunch of us who were just really big into wrestling, and I remember we had to do like an evolution project for science, and like we did a workaround that we ended up passing in the evolution of WWE. So it went from like WWF to WWWF
WWF
to WWE, and we like went down the whole
yeah.
heritage line, and we were like,
Yeah.
and we ended up doing this whole like report, me and my friend, on wrestling, and passing it in, and actually getting a decent grade because, well, it was evolution. And I was just thinking, like, we worked so many things into wrestling. Between that and getting, the only other thing I remember is how many times I got booted out of class for telling people to suck it. But wild time in pro wrestling. But when I got out of high school, I wanted to get a little serious into it, and I did actually go down to Killer School myself. I was actually kind of told to not come because I'm short. I'm like 5'8".
Yeah.
At the time, 5'8" wasn't in pro wrestling. They wanted like 6+, 300. They wanted tall, big people, heavy hitters. This is like right before Brock Lesnar came in. This is right before, this is when you still had, big guys. So I took the advice, and I was like, I started to go into boxing, and I did amateur boxing and something, and other stuff with wrestling later on. But
Walter was famous for turning people away for their height or their weight.
And I respected that at the time because I didn't, watch. I never went to an independent show as a kid, really, unless something came to town. And when I did, it was usually, like Honky Tonk Man coming in, and they were flying WWE stars, and it was never really like what I see today. So I never saw people that were like 5'8", 5'9", 6'1". I never saw short people. I only saw WWE superstars.
Well,
and even when I
saw the story about Perry Saturn, right?
No.
So Perry Saturn trained at Kowalski's, and he's like 5'8", and he was told to go away, and he had nowhere to go. He traveled all the way out, drove out to come to Kowalski's. He was not going away. So he parked in the Kowalski parking lot in Malden, Mass, and slept in his car for 2 weeks. He stayed there and came every day. And Walter's like, no, you're too short. And I guess after the end of 2 weeks, finally he's like, okay, lace up and get in the ring.
Well, I mean, that's dedication right there. And I mean, but that's the thing. I mean, at that time, 5'8" wasn't a wrestling height. Today, it's a little bit different. I've been, I've done like day sent trainings, and I've done other trainings a little bit here and there. And it's a whole different game. You can be almost any height. It's more inclusive, more for anybody. As long as you can do, what's entitled to do, you can pretty much wrestle. which is which is kind of nice in a lot of ways. It kind of brings it into a lot of people that are very athletic and very creative, but just might not have that height or that
Yeah.
extra 50 or 60 pounds that they're looking for.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what pretty much with me. I ended up there, and then I ended up boxing, and boxing was a lot of fun. And with that, after you get to a certain age, so you have to kind of lace up the boots and well, the gloves rather. Um, but then I kind of got wrapped myself back into wrestling again and got into that independent scene. But you said you were in Japan. What were you doing out in Japan?
I was working for Neo, 01, A to Z. So I was working for a bunch of different places out there. I was living there for a little while, training there. I did Toyota commercial film out there, or over there rather. So
Now,
I was there for a while.
does Japanese wrestling differ a lot from American?
Tremendously.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I heard it's a lot stiffer and a lot more like there's a lot more physicality in it.
Well, the matches are longer, obviously. The way the training for the women's different. You train for many, many years before you can be an undercard. And when you're undercard, you are the first match and you have to keep it on the mat the entire time. There's no such thing as training for, 6 months or 10 months and then jumping off the top rope and doing some Hurricane Rana bullshit because you saw it on TV. Like, they don't do that. You have to work your way up. Everybody breaks the ring down and puts the ring together. Doesn't matter if you are the main event or not, everybody does it. So the road schedule is rough. It's tough over there. It's a lot of work. You might be sleeping 4 hours a night. So yeah, it's different. It's very, very different. And yeah, 20-minute matches are standard for just standard.
But in a lot of ways, it sounds grueling, but in a lot of ways, it sounds very nicely disciplined and very neat.
It really is. I appreciated it. I got back. It's funny. You go back and, like I said, 20-30-minute matches in Mexico too. It's everything's 2 out of 3 falls in Mexico. So you do these things and you come back to the United States, and then these are women who have trained for years and years and years. Their parents were pro wrestlers. They come from second, third generation family wrestling, and it's just a different mentality there and other places. And then you come back to America and you're in the ring with some dude's girlfriend who just started training 5 months ago, and they're like, have a match with her. And I'm like,
it's a different world. It is.
It's completely different.
For the standards, I think, are a little bit different. And I think with America the way it is and just the way we are, there's a lot more promotions, I think, that kind of just pop up where you do get people that just hey, I've learned on YouTube, let me get to it. And they're like, sure,
yeah.
we're short a person, we'll use you, and they look okay. They might not be safe, but they look okay, so they'll keep getting used, and all of a sudden they got a career.
Yeah, that's it. It's what you look like. So it's more about what you look like than what how you
but
are.
It is refreshing to hear, when people do say that this kind of a system and a ranking, and you're able to kind of move your way up. You want to do cool things, cool, earn it. It's kind of a privilege to be able. It makes it almost a privilege or an honor, and that's what I always heard about. Even growing up, when wrestlers of big stature like Hogan or Andre the Giant would be invited to Japan, it would be an honor for them to be able to go there. They weren't the big top dog when they went there. They were just a guest, a humble guest at that.
Yeah.
And we would always see better matches out of them too. I always used to love seeing Hogan in Japan because he would wrestle.
You had to. You had something to prove.
But I mean, in the U.S., you just saw a couple, a little slug here, there, a little, hulking up, and boom, and over there, you'd see things that you'd never thought he could even do. It was always fun, especially even going back now as an adult. So you did all that, and then where'd you end up? I saw that you ended up in what, TNA, Impact.
I pretty much worked everywhere except for WWE, and then when they acquired some of the libraries of other places, I ended up on their shows too. So yeah, I did TNA, I did Ring of Honor, Jersey All Pro, AAA, IWA Puerto Rico. Yeah, kind of everywhere, everybody.
Kind of toured everywhere and did your thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got kind of recruited into the Kill City Cub.
Yeah, well, there was some space in there where I went back to school for my degree and did a series of comic books for Marvel and DC, and because that's what I started doing first. So, and wrote a
So
children's book.
originally you're a comic an artist, or
No, I'm a comic
writer?
book model, but I'm also an author too. So I work with a bunch of very talented, amazing artists and writers and stuff like that. So I do that as well.
Awesome. That is awesome. I actually have my first author coming on later this week. She actually wrote a wrestling novel. Well, story style. Like, it seems almost like comic book style, but it's there's no pictures. It's just all written. I'm kind of interested to get her take on it. Cool read.
Cool.
But so you did work with Marvel and stuff. So that means you've done work with Disney.
No, because Marvel wasn't purchased.
Oh, wasn't prejudice. This is prior.
Yeah, yep. So Marvel was acquired by Disney only a few years ago.
Oh, okay. And so you did all that, and I'm guessing you did Comic Cons, and
Still do.
kind of
Mhm.
still do the Comic Cons. Nice. Like I said, that's a great, it's a great kind of place to be at a Comic Con. I feel you can be a fan of almost like so many different things.
Yeah, I mean,
And once you walk through the door, though, it doesn't even matter what thing it is you're a fan of. You're automatically accepted into the fandom of whatever it is, and it's like boom.
True. Yeah, I mean, anyone, if you're, I mean, I get here and there. Anyone can find me on Instagram. It's Real April Hunter, or you can go to Patreon April Hunter or Twitter April Hunter. I'll post my schedule. So
Yeah, I'm gonna post all your social links on the about of this page too, so people can find you with these. Um, I like to let people know who I'm talking to and where they can find them easily, because I get a lot of people that are like, oh well, how do I find them? I'm like, I gotta search through the links and whatever it is.
great.
But that's great though, and then you stay active. And again, for anybody that hasn't seen, I do recommend, again, watching the Kill City Cup. It's picking up some more steam. I saw it just got picked up on television, local TV, but in Maine. So it's going to be shown on Maine, and I guess that gets also broadcasted online, which is cool. It's attached to a TV channel.
True. That's I saw that with Luke was putting that out, and I was like, that's awesome. That's really awesome. So he's done very well. He's done very well, and I'm really proud of him. Just coming from, not that I'm surprised. A lot of people that come from this business are incredibly, and they think a lot of us are dumb meatheads, but most people in wrestling are actually unbelievably educated and well read and know a lot about marketing and promoting. So I'm not surprised, but Luke has definitely taken that up to another degree.
I always tell people, if wrestling is done right, it'll be run as smooth and as efficient and as lucrative as a carnival.
No kidding.
But a lot of it is the same mechanics. I know people don't like that carny attitude, but a lot of it is the same. You got to get your image out there. You got to get, you got to almost shove, the product down. There's a lot of product out there. How are you going to be the best? And a lot of the wrestlers know how to maneuver, how to get themselves out there, how to get themselves seen, how to get themselves found, where to go. And a lot of them have such creative minds that you like. I've talked to a lot of them just, in DMs and just shot ideas, even about Kill City. I've talked to a bunch of people, Mason X, the Technical Alchemist, all these guys, they have incredible minds with these deep storylines for their characters that could go in millions of directions. And, Mason X makes his own masks and does all this other creative side work. And they all do it. If you're in part of that group, you'll see a lot of people posting their creative works. So, a lot of it incorporates horror movies and other stuff. I'm a big horror fan myself, so I always get roped in by the horror. That's another reason why I got roped into Kill City, was the horror too. It has a little bit of aspects of that. Very, exciting, and I'm really excited to kind of see what happens next. I know obviously this is a lot of steam for this to roll and for this to keep going, but there can be no way to not follow up with something, because
I hope so.
It's amazing. And like I said, I just keep letting the world see how great of a product it is. Because it is something different. It's something special. And it is something that in a lot of ways is positive towards the wrestling community. It changes the outlook of what indie wrestling is and can be.
Absolutely. And thank you for doing that. And by the way, thank you for having me on. I know my time is kind of up because I have to do something else after this, but I really appreciate you having me on to talk
And I
about all
thank you
this.
for having and taking the time out of your day. I really appreciate it. And again, just keep doing it out there. I'm gonna post all your links.
Try our best.
I'm gonna post all your links, and I'll let people know where they can, catch you and how they can find you and where they can, follow and do all that fun stuff.
Awesome.
Thank
Sounds
you
great.
very much. Have yourself
All
a
right.
great night.
You too. Thanks very much. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
What a great episode, folks. My goodness. April Hunter. Amazing. What a great time. That was fun. I tell you what, folks, I suggest, and I'm going to put the link again in this, check out Kill City Cup. You'll see it. You'll see it all. And all the greatness that we talked about. Have yourself a great night. Versace Stoner out.
Welcome to the Kill City Cup.